Well, happy Mother's Day to everybody. Not to everybody, because the guys, that's weird for us, right? I mean, that's just, especially in this day and age. To all the ladies out there, thank you so much for being here. Can we hear it for the women one more time? Happy Mother's Day to each and every one of you. And whether you're a mom, or you have a mom, or you're a bonus mom, or you have been impacted by a motherly figure in your life, we all know the blessing that a woman has been in our own lives. And a lot of us might not even have our mother as that main person who influenced us later in life. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a few moments. But to start this off, we're going to start off with a little bit of fun, because who wants to hear me preach? I mean, come on, let's be honest. We're going to start off with a little bit of fun. So for mothers in the room, we have 2 gift cards here we're going to be giving away. And it's going to be based off a few things. And so some of you might be like, oh, it's not my part of my life right now. But for those that are, you're going to win this. So for the person in the room who has more than 2 kids, raise your hand. Okay, there's a few. Okay, 3. Keep them up if they're above 3. 4. You can't win. You got 4? You got 4? Okay, how many do you have? 5? 4? Not 4.5? Can adopt somebody? Isaac, you're the first. All right, well, here we go. We got you a gift card. Can we hear it for her? Congratulations on that. 5 kids. Whew. There's a reason that nobody else raised their hand, because they gave up at 5. Like before 5, they were like, no more. All right, so who is my newest mother in the room? Who has the youngest baby in the room? I see there's 2. Mick, you can't be a part of this. All right, ages of the 2 little ones. 4? A year. All right, 4.5 months. That is a winner. All right, let's hear it for the moms. You're going to need that coffee. I should have given you more on there, so I apologize. But enjoy the coffee on us. It is our way of blessing you and also blessing the people at Coffee Oasis. Well, today is Mother's Day, and I'm going to give you a little bit of backdrop. I know Sierra gave you a good amount of it, so thank you so much for doing that. I just want to encourage you, we are here to honor you for what you have done and what you are doing, because God has given you a significant role, not just in the lives of your children, but in the lives of those that are around you every week. And as you know, relationships aren't easy, right? Relationships can be a little bit of a challenge. And I know for the people in my life, I have been blessed by many women that have impacted my life in a great way. First off, shout out to my mom who's in Ohio. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. It was her birthday this week too, so she always gets like those, it's like the person with the birthday right by Christmas. She always gets the Mother's Day card and it says happy birthday in it. So like, that's just how I roll. Like, I can't do 2 cards, Mom, but love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all that you've done for me. And while we all have been impacted by amazing women in our lives, or maybe we've had some challenges, we know that relationships can be hard. Not for the faint of heart, right? Because it reveals a lot of our selfish tendencies. You ever saw parents and kids fight? It's the battle of the wills of who wants what in the moment, right? You are toe-to-toe with a 12-year-old ready to fight for life because there is something that we're drawing a line on. And that's just in parenting. I mean, we're not even talking about relationships with your spouse or relationships with your landlord or anything like that. Relationships just can get complicated because we all have selfish tendencies. And those selfish tendencies reveal in us some very broken spaces where other relationships maybe have hamstrung you or hurt you and you weren't ready for it. And maybe even some of you here today may have experienced being dismissed, overlooked, undervalued. Maybe you even feel taken advantage of. Anybody else in the room? Or maybe you've even felt unheard. And now all of you all are glossing over like a bunch of like people. They're just like, I'm in that space now, Mike, thanks. But the real thing is that our lives, this can even happen with our most favorite people in our lives, right? You've had a relationship where you're like, that's the person, man, I love that person. And then that person you have these very same things come up. For instance, getting married, or even having a roommate, or traveling with a family member more than one state. Ever done that before? Yeah, you'll regret that choice every single time. But we all have these wrestling matches. And for me, getting married recently reminded me of who I was and who I was not. Ever have that moment? Before marriage, I could organize my life around my preferences, my desires, my schedule, what I thought was best for me. I mean, how many of you guys are like, I am the person that knows the most about working out or eating healthy or this or that? You're always that person, right? Because you've watched 10 reels this last week about how to be the best person in that category. But what happens when somebody else comes onto the table with you and shares their preferences, their schedule, their best ideas for how you should live? How do you balance that? Because I'll tell you this, having one vote at the table is so much easier than inviting a bunch of other people and giving them a vote. Like, you almost want to pull the veto card, right? Like, you can't vote. But often that is what our relationship challenges come down to, is how do we share our routines, our finances, our calendar, our emotions, and our decisions like the people in Acts did. Because we're going to take a look at that again, and we're going to see how Acts really showed people that were actually very submitted not to just their own agenda, but to God's agenda. Relationships reveal whether I actually know how to love or just how to manage my comforts. Have you ever had this moment in your house? It's too cold in here. Oh no, it's too hot. You have these two people that believe that one temperature is exactly what God has told them. This is the temperature. The house will not. You guys know this, right? You've had the dad in your house, 68, no more, no less, or 62. Some of you maybe 55. You have a grandmother maybe who has something like that. They're convinced that their answer is right and yours is wrong. How many of you knew that you can load a dishwasher wrong? Right? Like, I thought I was doing it right for 30 years. Don't get married. You find out you're doing it completely wrong. How many of you are like, the dishwasher, we bought that thing so it would wash dishes. Why do I have to wash them beforehand and then put them in the dishwasher? Like, that makes no sense. Come on, right? Or maybe you've had a parenting difference, right? You were raised one way. And the other person, because you like this person, because why? They're different than you. This is the fun fact of life, right? We're not drawn to the person that's the same as us. It's got to be the total opposite. Then when you meet this person, you start raising kids together, you're like, whoa, well, you can't do that. Well, that's what my mom and dad did. Well, that's totally wrong. Well, you like me, right? Yeah, but not really. That's kind of how these conversations start. Or maybe you have a schedule tension. Who of you wakes up before 7 o'clock every day? How many of you wake up after 8? You don't have to raise your hand, but there's judgment in the adult world. But we all have these different schedules, and we all wrestle with them. And here's the fun fact. Why does Scripture always have a truth in it that surprises you and me? You've read Proverbs 27:17, right? You know this verse. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And in my mind, when we got married, I was like, this is great. I'm going to sharpen her. This is going to be great. And or we think, we get into a friendship, or maybe we have a workout partner who thinks we should go harder. One more set, buddy. No, I don't want to. Or maybe when you dive into a relationship, you think, man, this is going to be good for me. I'm going to be a better person from this relationship. So you get into the relationship and you're super excited. And then you realize something. That this hurts. Sharpening ourselves actually hurts. Because you know why? That means that something was dull. That something was blunt, that needed to be kind of sharpened up. And this sharpening factor, we come to realize, is more than just a nice saying. It's actually part of our sanctification. And you say, wait a minute, I get sanctified by that? Yeah, because we learn to put our desires down. Because before things become useful, those dull edges, they have to come off. And in the same way, God often uses relationships to rub against us as part of those dull and unhealthy and unhelpful parts of our lives, so that we can become sharper and stronger and more useful for Him. Our anchor passage for this series has been, and as we've talked about trusting God, that's what this whole thing is all about, is in Acts 2, 42 through 47. And we're going to take a look at this again because for some reason, every point we talk about, it ends up being in this context. And we're talking about relationships today. So let's dive in to Acts 2:42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe of the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. And all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who was in need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Week 1, we talked about our giving our hearts fully to God. That He needs all of us, not just parts of us. We can't compartmentalize who we are with God. It just doesn't work that way. Last week, we discussed how the church in Acts was a generous church, how they helped one another, how they sold their possessions so that they could bless those that were in the camp and also bless those who were beyond their walls. And how we are called to do the same here at FCC. Today, our focus is on verse 46. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. Relationships are the basis of what they did. The Bible, which is, again, it's inerrant, it's without error. We agree on that. We have to then look at this at that context. The Bible didn't mess up by saying every day. Now, for those of you that are introverts in the room, right now you are squirming, thinking, man, that sounds great, but that is slightly overwhelming, Mike. Not my thing. So were all of those guys in the Acts, were they all extroverts that got saved early on? Only extroverts get saved in the early going because we all have to meet together every day. There is no way that's true. Because it talked about how the disciples would get away every time with Jesus. Like they would go and hang out with a bunch of people and they're like, we need some free time, Jesus. Let's go back and get some fish over some fire and hang out by ourselves. So they withdrew into a quieter place. See, I think that people prioritize unity in the book of Acts. They prioritized being together because it was good. It was fun at times, and it often unified them around what the church was about in Acts 2. And even though they hung out together, the number didn't stay the same. It says at the very last verse that He added to their number daily. So they weren't exclusive. How many of you have been don't they raise your hands, don't you dare. I was going to say, who's been in a church that's ever been exclusive? Or felt like it's exclusive? Or a group of people that feel exclusive? That's not how the church is meant to be. And that's tough for all of us to hear. Even the person who's like, yeah, I know exactly who those people are. Because we all tend to have this exclusivity to us. Our demographic of age, our background, or who we are, if we have 5 kids, or we have no kids, there's different things that different people hang around because they like seeing themselves in a mirror. There's this draw that we all have. How many of you ever had that kid in your house that walks by a mirror and it's always one of these? Your head's on a swivel to look at yourself every single time. But we have this innate part of us that is really self-centered and self-focused on who we are. But God is asking us to be together and also be looking outward and inviting people. See, in these spaces, people were being brought in. They were living together, sharing with one another the Bible and how it taught them to live their lives, how they would model it. Discipleship, what that really is that you do something and modeling it and what it looks like and how to do it and how you serve God, and then discipling somebody else and giving them an opportunity to do the same while you walk alongside of them. We have this context of what discipleship looks like. It means we sit over the Bible for 12 hours and we just talk about it. That disciples your mind only. There's a physical part of what we do, and it's supposed to be the action. And actually, that seems to be more important to what Jesus did. So my encouragement to us is that discipleship doesn't just look like sitting over a Bible. But what it does mean is that we take the Bible and we live it out, and we walk beside somebody and show them how it's done. And then in turn, they show somebody else. And I think that's how that number multiplied. I believe that our gracious Father has a deep desire for us to have good relationships. All of you that are right now feeling like there's a tension in the room because relationships are hard right now, take a deep breath, because I know they are. We all have them. We all rub. But God has put us in relationships for a purpose, because he loves us. He wants to be in relationship with you. So our big idea today is that the early church wasn't events and community focused. It was built on relationships. Here's a crazy thing. Community is the result of relationships, not relationships the result of community. Or I said that backwards, didn't I? I think I did. That's terrible now. Now I got to sit here and think about it. I had a word puzzle in my brain on this. But if relationships don't exist, community doesn't exist. That's not possible. We all say, hey, I want to get together with a community. I want to get with the bingo club down at the whatever place that is down the street. I can always see it every day when I drive by it. Come to our bingo thing. Well, that sounds like a fun thing to do, but I don't know anybody there. I have no relationships. And sure, I could develop them, but actually what good community comes from is from relationships. Us being intentional to walk hand in hand with other people and say, hey, let's move in this direction because we believe Jesus is doing this. You could say that Christianity was never meant to be a weekly attendance habit. It was meant to transform how we do our meals, how we do celebrations around weddings and kids being raised up and parenting and friendships and even conflict and even community. The Bible shows us that relationships are so important that our Savior died so that he could have a relationship with you and I. That's how important it is. Faith never enters if your faith has never entered your home until you fully has entered, or it hasn't fully entered your home if it hasn't fully entered your life. So if you haven't lived out your faith and it doesn't exist in your home with your kids, or when you're sitting on your couch watching Netflix or whatever you do at night, then your faith isn't real. Because it's supposed to be a part of who you are when everybody else doesn't know what you're doing. What you do in secret is who you are in public. And often we like to put a facade on our face. There's many books, many movies that have been written about how people put a facade on their face and live their daily life. And yet, I mean, guys, just look at some recent podcasts about how, like, some of those crime ones, you see this one guy and he's this person, and this is who he really is. And we as Christians have to think about how we live our lives. Because while raising my girls, I used to remember we would invite people over to our home all the time. We would have groups. We would do groups intentionally, and we would invite specific people because I knew that if my kids were in a season of life where they didn't want to talk to their dad because they were too cool or this was too private or whatever it might be, that my prayer was that they would talk to those people that we would bring into their home week after week, month after month. And we put good adults around us so that I knew if my kids didn't want to talk to me or my wife about this, that they could go to somebody that they can trust. We as the church should be doing the same thing. So our point number 1 is faith starts at home. 2 Timothy 1:5 says this, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Paul is talking to Timothy, who's now leading a church, and he has been given the authority to lead this church, but he starts to point out to Timothy, this is where your faith began. It began in your grandmother and your mother. Before Timothy ever preached publicly, his faith was modeled privately by these two women. They were the cornerstones of who he would become. And some of us here, because of a grandmother or a mother or a spiritual mother that kept praying for us when nobody else knew about it, when we didn't even know about it, have been impacted greatly by those people. Maybe it's a praying mom that's in this room right now who has been praying for their child who has been walking away from Jesus for decades. Maybe it's a mom who brought kids to church when nobody else in the house wanted to go, but mom made sure that the kids got to church or to Sunday school. Maybe it was a spiritual mom who mentored somebody who was just down the road from them and saw them often, long face, tears in their eyes sometimes, not knowing why, but there was hurt somewhere in that person. And they reached out to them. Or maybe it's a woman that stood beside you. We all have this, where as we get older, that person comes into our life and helps us raise kids, teaches us what it's like to be able to stand beside somebody in a marriage and do it in an honoring and loving way. Because we all think we have it all together, right? We all think we know what we're doing until we don't. And then the only thing that's the difference between the world and the church is that the church should come by and they should not just talk about what is going on. They should be girding them up in prayer. They should be walking alongside of them, encouraging them, telling them this is worth it. Fight for it. Stay in the fight. All of you probably, not all of you, that would be terrible if it was all of you, but most of you have had children who have walked away from Christ and have maybe come back or maybe are still struggling in that. And my encouragement to you today is stay with it. Pray. Seek the face of God. Because when they're this little, we hope and pray for them that what the future looks like. And that's what we're going to do next week when we have child dedications, is that we want to honor the parents, we want to pray for them, and we want to pray over that life, that little one, that they would know who Jesus is in an intimate way. Better than we do. We want it to be passed on to them. For me, I experienced this multiple generations. My mom, of course, was in her faith, but my dad's mom, who is 98 years old. My dad went up and visited her yesterday. It's the first picture I've seen of her in 2 years. And she has dementia, and she's rather older now. But I remember being a kid. She lived 2 hours away from us. And I'm telling you, going to Christmas on Christmas Day and traveling 2 hours when you just opened all your toys, worst day in the world. I'm just letting it be known. Just some wisdom out there. You know, you got kids. But no, we used to make this drive, though, 2 hours. And she would make the drive 2 hours to come see us. And I will never forget it. It was without fail. She'd lean over, and with those big grandma lips, she'd plant a kiss right on my cheek. She'd whisper in my ear, I am praying for you. I am praying for you. And I hate to say this, but as a teenager, I thought, well, that's nice. That's cool. Thanks. But I often wrestled with, did she really pray for me? Did she really stand in the gap for me? And I believe today, without a shadow of a doubt, that her prayers have moved mountains in my life. She paved the way for me. I watched how her son, who was my father, lived his life. Was it perfect? No. But he was committed. He was focused on his faith and his family and his work. That man didn't miss a day of work in 30 years. He was committed to his family and making sure that we were always going to family things, even though me as a teenager did not want to hang out with my family. I wanted to hang out with my friends on Christmas or on whatever day it was. But now I appreciate it. But because I know that she is the one who laid that foundation in his life, I can remember her and what she has done, and the women that have done the same for you. That is why being here at this church in this season, I am praying that we would be a multi-generational church. Because it's personal for me, and I believe it should be personal for you. Maybe those of you that have gone on before you haven't been healthy. Maybe they haven't been the exemplary parent. But guess what? That can change right here, right now with this generation. We get to be the change for what the future might look like. There are teens and kids in this room that sit across from you and down the aisle around this room who, if somebody would come over to them and pray for them, who would see them and not just ignore them because they're a kid, but actually see the value that they carry. That's a church that lives and thrives. That we would be able to call out what we see in somebody. I'll never forget a 75-year-old man that would sit in my church front row, had arthritis like nobody else, couldn't get up the stairs, but he came to church every Sunday. He did not miss. And I remember he was he'd be the funniest guy up there in the front row, but he would always sit me down and he'd say, Mike, God has some great things in store for you. Don't lose sight of it. And it wasn't because he was doing something extravagant. He never handed me a $100 bill. He never gave me a scholarship. He never did any of that. What he did, though, is he gave me a value through his words that impacted me for eternity. I'll never forget Jack Land. That man made an impact in my life. And what can we do for others? Because me and you, we may never preach to thousands, but we can disciple the person that sits at our dinner table or the person that sits down the row from us. We can love on them and pour out on them. Moms are often the culture builders in our homes, but they are never meant to carry that emotional and spiritual load alone. For the rest of us in this room, honor is not a once-a-year brunch. It's not taking them out to dinner, though it's a nice thing. But what it really is it's participation. What you cultivate at home gets carried on to the next generation. Your children will often absorb what you embody before they obey what you say. How many of you can be a testament to that? Because, here's the fun fact, right? You can tell a kid to go clean their room. They didn't hear a word. But they will pick up the annoying, unhealthy, emotional response that you just made in your home real quick. And you're like, wait a minute, that's backwards. No, that's practical. That's what discipleship looks like. They mirror what they see. And so my ask to you and to myself even is, are we modeling prayer in our household? What does good, healthy repentance look like in our home? Do we forgive one another? Or do we push it under the rug? Do we present ourselves emotionally? Do we seek out maybe counseling or therapy or something that will help us get over the hump instead of just trying to make it each week? Are we consistent at home? Consistency is a big one. I've learned as a dad who has recently gone through the challenges I have had is that consistency wins every single time. I'm telling you, consistency wins. It's not the big bravado. It's not the home run hitter that they need at home. They need consistency. Number 2, love shows up. John 19:25 through 27 says, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, woman, here is your son. And to the disciple that he loved, he says, here is your mother. And from this time on, this disciple took her into his home. Here Jesus is, dying on the cross, and he still sees relational responsibility. That's my mom there. I got to make sure she's taken care of. Guys, he was nailed to the cross. This isn't like just some folklore where he was just like, oh, hey guys, don't forget to do this, or I put this in my will type thing. No, Jesus gives it direct attention. Woman, behold, this is your son. Behold, this is your mother, he tells him. Even in unimaginable pain, Jesus created care and community for his people. Jesus did not let his suffering exhaust him from neglecting his responsibilities as a son. Because remember, he's the oldest son. And in those times, he had a deep responsibility to his family. See, we live in a culture that treats relationships like it's disposable. I can get another friend. I can find another person in my life. And sure, those are probably fair and true statements, but are they healthy statements? Because if someone stops responding to you, maybe you've called them or texted them, and we're quick to move on because, well, they haven't responded to me, they must not really care, therefore I'm moving on. I want to challenge you today not to ignore said patterns. Because when you notice distance in somebody, don't always default to disconnecting from them. Sometimes you need to push back and reach out and say, what's up? What's going on? Is there something in your life that maybe that's why you're not responding to me? Because our culture has trained us. If things get hard, we leave. And if it gets inconvenient, we pull back. And if someone disappoints us, we create distance in our lives, right? How many of you have ever distanced yourself from somebody because you're like, well, they're unhealthy? Now, there's some wisdom there, deep wisdom. But I would always throw back another line. Like we've talked about this in our relationship with some of our family members. And like there's some tension that happens sometimes, right? You ever have that tension? And you're like, okay, this is unhealthy. I need to separate myself from this. But at the same time, we need to be available if there is ever an opportunity for them to repent or to return back or to ask for forgiveness or to say, hey, I want you to know that I love you and that I do care about you. Because healthy relationships aren't built on convenience. They're built on commitment. Jesus shows us something different here. Biblical love is not built on convenience. There's 4 Greek words for love, which you probably all know this, but I'm going to remind you of some of what they are. First one is eros. It's a romantic and passionate love. There's philia, a friendship and brotherly love. Then there's storge, which is a familial love. This is family love. And then there's agape love. Selfless, sacrificial, unconditional. And you say, but that's God's love, Mike. I can't do that. God's called us to that, though. He says you may not be able to attain this perfection, but I want you to aim for it. He wants us to stay present, to be faithful, to keep showing up, Because at the cross, Jesus didn't just save individuals, he formed families, and he formed a community that would make a change in the world. See, relationships look like presents. This applies to marriages, friendships, family members, aging parents, co-workers, neighbors, because relationships only deepen when sacrifice exists. The people who shape your life most are often not the loudest ones. They are the most consistent ones. And often we justify relational dysfunction because we're stressed, tired, wounded, busy, or we're overwhelmed. If you are overwhelmed today, if you are tired, I'm not just speaking to marriages, I'm speaking to the broad spectrum of relationships. And you just want the opt-out button right now, I want to encourage you. God has not called his church to that, and he has not called us to that because we are the church. Does that make you less of a person if you feel that way? No. We all have moments when we're tired and fatigued. When we're at the goal line, per se, and we're like, I don't know if I can go another time, coach. I don't know if I can do this again. I'm exhausted. That's when we rely on the Holy Spirit to do a work in us. When we rely on him and ask him into our lives to make a difference. See, ordinary moments that are good for relationships look something like this. And these are not sexy, folks. Sitting at a hospital with a hurt or sick friend. Staying up for hard conversations when you'd rather just go to bed and say, let's just talk about this in the morning. Or driving kids to practice when you know they have not been obeying lately. Maybe folding laundry for the kid who can't turn their clothes out right. How many of you have had that conversation? Or maybe it's answering the phone when the person that's calling you don't want to talk to right now. Or maybe it's checking in again after multiple times of checking on somebody and they're not responding. Real love usually looks less like fireworks and looks more like faithfulness. Number 3, control kills connections. Relationships have a way of exposing what's really going on inside of us. Have you ever prayed, God, your will be done, while privately hoping his lines up with yours? That's called control, folks. Crazy. But if we desire him to do what, I know I do it, guys. I have plan A and plan B. Jesus, if you can do this one, that'd be great. This one, okay, it's a good backup plan. I'm just giving you options, God. That's how we come at him sometimes. But he looks at us and he says, I want all of you. Because the truth is, control often feels safer than surrender. Most of us have experienced control of some form in our lives. Maybe as a child, dating relationship, maybe anybody? Or maybe a friendship. Or maybe a voice that long ago spoke to you that no longer speaks, but it still shapes every decision you make. That's control. And how sometimes we allow that. Because control feels safer than being vulnerable. Because see, if I stay guarded, I can't get hurt anymore. If I control the conversation, I can avoid being fully known. I don't need anybody to know my business. If I keep people at arm's length, I never risk getting rejected again. Oftentimes, most relationships, they begin with freedom. Isn't that funny? We are like the most free people when you meet. Think about this. You met your spouse. You did what you wanted. You loved on them when you wanted to. And then 10 years later, for all of a sudden, fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being disappointed, you start saying, could you stop doing it this way? I don't like that. I've been doing it for 10 years. I don't like it, really. Could you just get me flowers again? What? Anything. It's just these perspectives of preferences that we somehow start to control this relationship. When fear enters the relationship, love can slowly turn into control. It's not, I want to know you anymore. It's that I need to manage you now. Or instead of how can I serve you, how can I secure you in my life? Because sometimes we don't seek control because we're strong. We seek control because we're scared to death. I know men in this room, you probably don't want to tell anybody that you're scared of something relationally or emotionally. But can I be honest with you? We have the same thing. Why do guys struggle with whether their father loves them or not so much? Because they care. We want to make our dads proud. And some of us didn't grow up with a dad. We grew up with this missing hole in our life. And so for the rest of your life, you're striving to please somebody and it's whoever's in front of you in that moment. But there's real work that God wants to do inside of us because he wants community and relationships to be the forefront of what the church looks like. Galatians 5:1 says it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Not reckless freedom, not boundaryless freedom, but the kind of freedom that love can be given honestly, safely, and openly. That means trusting God relationally looks like forgiving, apologizing, setting healthy boundaries, telling the truth. You don't have to lie to the people around you. You can be honest and know that you're going to be heard. Because risking closeness, again, is probably one of the most important things that we can all do. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle, patient, bearing with one another in love. Do you know why Scripture says bear with one another? Because people are hard sometimes. Marriage is hard. Parenting is hard. Friendships are hard. Church people, you're hard. Why? Because every relationship is made up of imperfect people trying to love each other while still healing themselves. That's why Acts 2 is so powerful. They didn't just attend church together, they shared life together. It never said they met in a place for an hour and hung out and then sang songs and left. Now, that practice has been something that has become part of the culture, but that is not how it started. They chose connection over convenience. Point number 4. Healthy relationships preach. What does that mean, Mike? See, the gospel was not just proclaimed, it was demonstrated relationally. People often encounter Jesus first through a person, through maybe a healthy marriage, maybe a safe friendship, maybe a loving parent, maybe a spiritual mentor, or a reconciled family member that they came back to. That's how people first see Jesus. They don't see Jesus when you go, hey, do you know Jesus? That's not when they started, because they've been watching you long, long time. Before many people ever believe your theology, they experience it through relationships. Vince, if you want to come on up. Lately, 2 large nonprofit research companies did a survey on people who left the church in the last 5 years. Do you know the number one reason why people left church? It wasn't COVID. Just throw it out there. 67% said they stopped believing in who God was. It wasn't because of a program, a group leader, or a pastor. It was because they stopped believing. These are 2 very well-founded researchers. So how do we address this in our church today? And in closing, I want us to think about this. This isn't just the one part. This is just a piece of where we're going as a church. It shows that the number one factor of whether faith sticks in your experience is whether you have attended the local church between the ages of 5 and 17. If a child's experience is negative, meaning hypocritical or boring, which means not real, confusing, judgmental, or harmful, there is roughly a 70% chance they won't identify with their faith in their adulthood. But if it is positive, there is an 84% chance that they will stay and find faith. That is why we're looking to invest in our kids and our youth here. We need to be invested in the next generation. Who does? You and I do. Because if we're not invested in them, their generation will either look worse than ours or similar. Someone has to pass the experience along, but it has to be positive. You don't need a program to invest in. We just need a willingness to walk alongside some people and say, hey, I see you. How are you doing today? It's so good to see you here today. Did your mom make you come? No. Because who cares about talking with the pastor? Can I just be honest with you? Would you go talk to one of them today and make an investment in their lives? You can talk to me afterwards. I can get coffee. But they desire somebody to see them. Have you ever been to the redwoods in Northern California? Yeah? Anybody see those nice, beautiful trees out there? There's a guy who cuts down trees. I don't ever want to, but man, I just think sometimes, oh, that would be so fun. But can I be honest with you? Those trees, what keeps them standing when there is severe storms? What is it about them that keeps them standing in massive weather and challenges? They have these interconnected roots that go horizontal. They're only about 1.5 feet deep. 18 inches is the average depth, but they interconnect together. And some of us are trying to survive life in private faith and isolated spirituality. But God has designed you to stay standing through healthy and close relationships. Oftentimes we stand in the streams of life wondering if we're going to make it on our own. But in reality, we can look around to hundreds and thousands of people who stand with us in faith with Jesus, and they are here to be with us. Your relationship preaches before you ever will out of your mouth. I want to encourage you, get involved in a group. We have many groups, Thursday nights, Tuesday nights, Saturday mornings. I'm trying to think of all of them, Tuesday nights. We have different ones throughout the week. You can go to the QR code in the back and you can get signed up or see me or Joel. We would love to get you connected because that is where people want to get connected. I had a woman this week who reached out to us, just wanted to, hey, she didn't ask me when service time was. She didn't ask me if we have kids ministry. She asked me, how can I connect with somebody in my situation? And I sent her name over, and she's going to hopefully get connected into a group because I hope that she may feel isolated right now because of her circumstances. But maybe Jesus is reaching out to her heart right now. And maybe this could be the moment where she enters into relationship with a community of people who love and stand with her. So my challenge to you today, in closing, is who is God asking you to invest in, to forgive, to reconcile with, to prioritize, and to stop neglecting? Your faith was never meant to stop at your personal salvation. It was actually meant to transform relationships. So who is one relationship God is asking you to trust him with this week? Will you bow your heads with me?